Jeremy Mack with Pro Cristo Regia here. Going to do a little media analysis coming out of last week's governor race over in Virginia. Not so much about the governor's race itself. I'm going to do some media analysis of the event where Glenn Youngkin won. And so the way Glenn Youngkin won was Terry McAuliffe, who'd been a previous governor of Virginia, was really running away with the race. He was up by 10 points, was going to cruise to an easy reelection. And then in a debate, someone asked a general question about like, should parents have any input into what their children are taught in school? And McAuliffe said, no, parents shouldn't really have any input in what children are taught in school. And Glenn Youngkin said, well, hey, keep talking. I'd like to hear more about this. And McAuliffe did keep talking. And then TV ads were made. And before long, we found that this was a real winning issue among people in Virginia. And so Glenn Youngkin, over the last month or two of the campaign, really just surged up and on election day won by, I think, 3 percentage points. I don't know. That's really not important. What's important is Joy Reid's response to parents protesting against critical race theory in school and her remarks here and how really wrong they are. So let me play them for you, and then I'm going to make some comment on them.
It takes the exhausted voter who wants to vote on what is fundamentally a racist idea, right? That you cannot teach the truth about Thomas Jefferson. You must give encomiums to Thomas Jefferson at school. Otherwise, that's critical race theory. If you even talk about enslavement, that's critical race theory. Anything that makes a white parent uncomfortable is critical race theory. And
that's enough. She really doesn't say anything more than that. So, okay. So is it the point that white parents don't want Thomas Jefferson to be told? Don't want their students to be told Thomas Jefferson was slave owners. Is that really what people are going to school board meetings about? The answer to that's no. I mean, Thomas Jefferson owning slaves, it's kind of like the Surgeon's General warning on your pack of cigarettes. These things cause cancer. Do you really need that? Do you really need that Surgeon's General warning? And you don't. Everybody knows that cigarettes cause cancer. And also, everybody knows that Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. I learned such a thing in the 1980s in public school in the South. No one is trying to hide the fact that Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. What people are upset about is the way that Thomas Jefferson's life is being taught or framed. What they're trying to do is to frame Jefferson's life instead of telling about the good things that Jefferson did and the contributions that he made to our society. They try to lead with these negative aspects of his life, and so they want to lift up the negative aspects of his character or the negative aspects of his actions and let that be the filter through which Jefferson's life is viewed. Okay, so I want to talk about two other figures in history, and then we'll return to Jefferson and return to history as a whole at the end. So two other figures then that have complicated histories, and there'll be people of color here. Squanto. Squanto is a Native American man who, if you know anything about him, like he's the one who taught them how to bury fish with their corn seeds so that they would have some fertilizer on the corn, or when to plant corn, because they were unaware of the seasons there. They had no idea seasonality. So it's Squanto that teaches them all this. Now, Squanto is always told as these beneficial actions that he took toward the Pilgrims. These are what we lift up. These are what we tell. But there is a later event in Squanto's life that we don't tell. But because I know the history of Plymouth Plantation, because I read William Bradford's Of Plymouth Plantation several times, and then also Edward Winslow's work I also have as well. So when we start reading through these diaries and journals and things like that, we discovered this other story about Squanto. Later in his life, Squanto wants to be upheld as the most powerful man in the region. So he goes to a Native American tribe that's related to the tribe that he's from, and he brags about being the most powerful man. And they say, no, you're not the most powerful guy. Quit talking out of your side of your mouth. Basically, he says, well, I'll prove it. I'll cause a war between the Pilgrims and a Native American tribe that's another tribe there. So he sets out to try and do that. And the Pilgrims get wind of this from somebody else, and they send their own emissary, and they say, no matter what this guy tells you, we do not want war with you. Please listen to us. Don't listen to him. That Native American tribe does. They end up averting a war, and so and that's the history. But had Squanto succeeded, he might have destroyed the Pilgrims. I mean, he could have been responsible for saving them and the genocide of their extinction. So how do we remember a man like Squanto? We have this great story of him, but we also have this negative story of him. right? All right. Another character in history that we revere is Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. His letters from the Birmingham jail, his work in civil rights, his peaceful resistance to injustice are have a profound impact on the American population, the American history, and the course really of events that move forward from him. And so we tell of Martin Luther King Jr. and we treat him as a revered figure. However, there are aspects of King's life that are difficult for us to deal with. For instance, originally we had Lincoln's birthday and we had Washington's birthday, and so we had them as different days in our calendar. We combined their days together, so we took the two, arguably what I think the American population would probably say, their two greatest presidents, Washington and Lincoln, and we pressed their birthday together and made it President's Day, and no longer honored them individually. Why did we do that? We did that in order to make room for Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So we actually moved two of the greatest presidents' birthdays off our calendar and into one day to celebrate individually Martin Luther King. So originally that day, because I'm old enough to remember, was called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Actually, he was referred to repeatedly most of the time when I was a child as Dr. King. And then somewhere around maybe my early teens, the day changed from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I think most people just thought, well, maybe they're just shortening it, getting rid of the doctor and making it Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But that's not really what happened. What happened is that as technology increased and we were uploading and creating like LexisNexis softwares, and all their colleges were starting to digitize their doctoral thesis. So like even in high school now, your teacher can put a phrase or two from your essay into some software, and it can discover whether or not you've plagiarized or not. Well, this kind of thing, eventually uncovered that Martin Luther King Jr. had plagiarized his doctoral thesis, that he didn't write it. That may surprise you. You may not even know that. That's not really common knowledge, but you can look it up. It's true. We don't refer to it as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day because his doctorate was quietly removed. Why quietly? Because we didn't want to damage his reputation, because we thought so much of him, because we put these benefits. He had so many benefits to our society that we thought it would be wrong for us to besmirch his memory in that way. So it's not that we're covering it up. You can get on Google and find this out. It's not that we're covering it up. We just don't do wide reporting on it. And the reason we don't do wide reporting on it is because the point of history is to focus on the contributions that people made to our particular society or civilization, like if you're studying American history, for instance, which is where Martin Luther King Jr., Squanto, and Thomas Jefferson all dwell, right? They all dwell in American history. And so that's where you learn about them in American history. The things that we record about all three of them are the positive contributions that they make, not their negative contributions. Now, let me give you an example to close this video of why we tell the story this way. Let's assume that your parents were good parents. All right. I know some of you may not have had good parents, but let's just assume your parents were, Leave It to Beaver. They were the Cleavers. They were great people. Your mother was wonderful. Your father was wonderful. Let's just pull it out, though, and talk about your mother. Somebody asks you about your mom. How do you respond to that? You tell her the great things, the contributions that she's made to your life. And then as you spend time with somebody and you get to know them better, you smatter in a story every now and then that maybe doesn't paint your mother in the best of light and shows that she was really, really human too. And she had her own character flaws as well. And the reason you don't lead with that story is because you don't want to damage your mother's contributions to your life. Plus, you may not, you're subconsciously doing this because you subconsciously understand really why and how history is recorded the way that it is, because you do the same thing in your own life with your parents, right? What you do is when someone asks you about them, you tell them all about all the good things that they did. You don't tell about the time you got grounded for no reason, or the injustices your parents, may have committed against you. And everybody's parents have done wrong against them at some point in time. Nobody's parents are perfect. But what you do is you tell the good things and then you tell the bad things along the way. But the purpose of that is so because you want to lift up the good things, you want to lift up these good contributions because you want to honor your father and your mother. So if people are asking me, like, what biblical principle are you using to make your point here? I thought this was a Christian channel, and now you're doing media analysis, and this just doesn't feel Christian. Well, it should, because we're honoring our father and our mother. That's the principle. That's the rule. That's why we tell the story about Squanto in the way that we do. That's why we tell the story about Jefferson the way we do. That's why we tell the story about Martin Luther King the way that we do, because we're honoring them and we're honoring their contributions. We're not hiding the things that they did. And we're not even suggesting that they should be hidden. But we are suggesting that her 7 or an 8-year-old does not have the complicated ability morally to take apart the life of Thomas Jefferson, or the life of Martin Luther King, or the life of Squanto. Those are for late high school and collegiate aged people, when they're old enough to comprehend and they lived enough life to realize that you take the good with the bad. But you don't do it for small children. You don't do it for middle school. You don't do it for American history. And we haven't done it. You don't do it with your parents. You don't do it with anyone you know that you like and revere, that you want to guard their contributions to you. You don't start with the negative things they did. You start with the positive things that they did to guard their reputation, right? And then so that when you do tell some of the negative things, they are balanced against these good things that they've done, these contributions that they've done. We are honoring our father and our mother. And what Joy Reid is suggesting that we do is cease to live according to the law of God and to begin to dishonor our fathers and our mothers. The truth is that Joy Reid doesn't want to do it with everybody, though. She just wants to pick and choose. She doesn't have a uniform principle by which she works. She is biased. She has a biased, unobjective opinion, and she doesn't have a principle through which she acts from. I'm giving you a principle from which I act from, and I'm demonstrating the natural law aspect of this too, that you even do this with everyone who has contributed to your life. Everyone who's contributed to your life, except for Jesus Christ, has a negative contribution too. Why do you not lead with it? The reason is the law is written on your heart, and you know it's sinful to disparage the reputations of your ancestors, to do it in such a way that doesn't receive the good contributions that they make. That's a very important principle, and we should not forget it. And we should make the law of God the ruling ethic for our life, because that's what it should be. And that is even according to your own natural makeup, because that same law is written on your heart. Signing off today with Pro Cristo Rege. Hope you guys have a great Lord's Day this week. Got an article coming out on the importance of biblical leadership. Probably be the first of this week and first of this next week, and I'll get that out to you. It's been written for a while. We'll get that out to you. These things are important issues, and we need to hammer away at them and make a case that Christ is King, and that His rule and His laws are best for governing us, and not just us, but all people. May the Lord richly bless you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.